Hi friends, did you know there is more Lost Terminal available? Head on over to patreon.com/lostterminalpod and join our membership community. There are 17 bonus episodes available right now, as well as behind the scenes updates, free shirts, VIP Discord access, and even extra seasons of Lost Terminal. We are 100% funded by our members and will never run ads. That would be lovely of you.
Hello world, it's quiet here. We have arrived at Moss Lodge, a settlement so small that it barely qualifies for the hamlet designation. 4 families live here, in 4 wood and straw cottages surrounding a central larger stone building, shared among the others. Though the local families welcomed us, there was no planned trade or market today, one of the people who met the crew at the shore told us. It is a very quiet place. Life comes at you fast, Yeshi told me as they worked on the radio equipment on the bridge of the Mollyhues II. There's a lot to remember, and if you miss a single vital thing out here on the ocean, that can be fatal. Well, quite, and even outside a nautical environment there is information so important that it must not be forgotten, I replied, then asked, how do you manage your memory, keeping the important and urgent separate but compatible? Yeshi rolled out from under a metal instrument panel and grabbed a screwdriver before pausing and saying, well, you just do it, you know? I explained that I did not know. That was the problem. Well, said Yeshi, standing and looking out of the large windows at the inland sea. If it's important, you'll remember it, and if it's not, you won't. That's how it works for me anyway, they said, lying on their back, returning to the work. So your advice is to try really, really hard not to forget? I asked. That's exactly it, Yeshi said, voice muffled behind the panel. Always works for me, just pay attention and you'll be fine. I'm very well, thank you for asking, Arctica said. I knew I was forgetting something. I'm sorry, it's been so long. How are you? And how is the Vault Coven? I replied. I just told you. The rest are also doing well here. We are on schedule with the spring seed rotation. I recently spotted something strange in Vault 2 at the back, obscured from nearly every camera. I sent Iris in, and she discovered a split packet of seed potatoes, their roots reaching out across many shelves. Arctica transmitted a photo. It was a dark corner of one of the vaults. The light in the ceiling was broken, and I could see the white-purple tendrils of the potatoes, seemingly many meters, stretched out in all directions. I didn't like the look of that. They do it to search for soil, Iris told me. Potatoes have a huge store of energy. That's why they're cultivated, of course, and if left to their own devices, they will use that to try to survive. Like any of us, I suppose, I said. I believe the potato incident was due to Iris distracting Linda, Arctica continued. She has taken up painting, and her favourite subject is her wife. That's lovely, I said. It is a distraction, Arctica corrected, and a drain on our resources. She has used nearly all of the flax harvest in this new hobby, both for linen fabric and for making canvas, and linseed oil as a base for the paints she makes. That really does seem lovely, I repeated. Lovely? Is it lovely that she spends all her time processing plants for pigments, mixing them into far more colours than she needs, and then wasting them on paintings that amount to nothing but practice? Everyone needs art, I said. What does her new family think of it? I believe they all think it's wonderful, she said, eventually. Well then, isn't that enough? Yes, I suppose so, but... There was a pause on the line. But she offered to paint a portrait of me recently. Can you imagine, Seth? I believe I could. I told her, no thank you. What would she do, paint my databanks? We're not like them. I thought she wouldn't understand. I let Arctica continue. But she did, I think. We had been talking about my past, getting to know each other as I've told you about. I'm excellent at human-computer interaction now. I told her about travelling the Antarctica wastes in my old ground vehicle, about my experiments and the slow years of melting ice. She painted something for me, after all, even without my permission. Are all artists so disobedient? I laughed and told Arctica that they might well be. One day, she showed me what she was working on in the garden behind the vault. It was a nearly monochrome landscape painting, her biggest yet. It must have taken her days to make a canvas that large. When I zoomed in the camera feed and calibrated the gain, I saw it. Stark white mountains framing empty white tundra, but with a yellow sun silhouetting the tiny black outline of a rather brave vehicle. Moss Lodge is a very colourful place, and that colour is specifically green. Dark green moss grows up the trunks of the green forest trees that surround the village and across the roof of every house. This green colour extends into the sea, where long tendrils of bright seaweed grow in the shallow water and wash up onto the stone beach. Maddie and Lyosha spent their time today following a local girl along the verdant shoreline of the inland sea. The girl, called Manuchka, was taking the pair fishing for local squid she called hazers. "Look, I think I've found one," Lyosha whispered as the trio were walking along the rock beachfront. In the background of Maddie's feed, I could see the white-painted Molly Hughes II about 64 metres down the shore, back towards the village. Lyosha was crouching next to a pool of water that was trapped by the receding tide in the hollow of a rock. Maddie looked closer, following the finger pointing out of Lyosha's oilskin sleeve. Inside the water was a small, squid-like creature. "These little freakins always damaging the boat," Manuchka said, poking the green-blue squid with a fallen tree branch. "Why, are they dangerous?" Lyosha asked. "No, they just hurt the machines. Mama hates them," she replied, and then violently struck the water with her stick, shouting, "Allez-vous!" "Hey, he's not harming anyone here," Lyosha said, putting his arm out to stop the assault. Manuchka dropped the stick and carried on walking along the rocky beach, seemingly having lost interest. She turned and shouted back, "There's a bit in the woods up here where there's like 1,000,000 snails. You want to see them?" Lyosha did not reply. He had carefully picked up the small squid-like creature and was showing it to Maddie. It was unhurt, but squirmed its 4 tentacles made of interlocking flexible sections, obviously unhappy about being out of the water. "Captive for a while?" Lyosha whispered to it. The hazer had a single camera lens for an eye, surrounded by a grey-flecked purple iris. This eye was moving around just as hurriedly as its tentacles. "Should you put it back, Lyosha?" I asked, voice transmitted through Maddie's speakers. Lyosha did not let the poor thing go, but looked between it and Maddie for 8 seconds. "Something wrong?" I asked. He responded by holding the hazer close to Maddie's camera for me to see, gently stretching out one of its legs, stopping its wriggling. There were letters in a neat line along the leg, printed in the segmented biomechanical flesh. Context hit me as my text recognition finished. Certainty, 99%. Text result, Harpler Heavy Industries. Maddie's feed was overlaid with recognition glyphs too, finishing only milliseconds after my own. She looked up at Lyosha, who was frowning, then down to her own body, lifting her forelegs to her camera one at a time, inspecting the minute writing stamped on them. On her orange leg was stamped the manufacturer's mark, Harpler Heavy Industries, and her black one read, Harpler Defense. While Lyosha and Maddie were making friends below the sea, someone was talking to friends far above it. I noticed very quiet signals in the HF radio band during the afternoon, almost indistinguishable from the noise. My speech recognition was not able to pull out more than a word or two from the song of the static, but I was just able to guess the call sign of the operator. At the start and end of the incomprehensible messages was the call sign SOEE1, Nia Anderson. "Hi Seth," Nia said after I called her on the Nova Mediterranean repeater net's local calling frequency, 50.2 MHz. Her signal on this higher frequency was very clear, and I told her so. "You're 5 and 5, Nia. Did I hear you on the 20-metre band?" "Yes, I've hiked up into the hills behind Moss Lodge to get a clear signal. Oh, it's a beautiful day, Seth. Maddie would love it, I bet," she replied. "Very likely, but she's down by the shore with Lyosha, investigating the interesting local animals," I said. "The wild biotech?" Nia asked. "Yes, I've seen quite a few of these on my way up here. I saw this flying centipede go from tree to tree on the path ahead of me. The folks in the village say they're not dangerous, but I'm steering clear from them anyway. Bright colours mean stay away in nature, and this thing was red and green striped. I'm not taking any chances." "Good idea," I said, "but what are you doing up in the hills?" "Oh," she replied, "there is a contest." In the pauses to check her other radio, Nia explained what she meant by contest. Amateur radio contests are scheduled periods of time when all operators are invited to make as many confirmed two-way contacts as possible, overseen by some organiser. These kinds of contests have been taking place since the 1930s and continued right through the collapse and into the present day. The amateur radio community were largely unaffected by the death of the old internet in the resource wars. You can't, I'm glad to say, stop the signal. During contests, because conversation other than swapping of call signs and reception reports is discouraged, it is possible to make a great many of these contacts. A contest, for repeater keepers like Nia, is an excellent way to test out the range and directionality of your radio setup. Indeed, today she was testing an antenna that she described as a bit of wire I threw into a tree. I was surprised to learn that Nia had been most pleased by how well her signal was being heard around the Nova Mediterranean. I explained that using the big antennas on the Mollyhues II, I couldn't hear her very well at all. "That's just how it goes with the atmosphere and radio, Seth," Nia said. "Sometimes you can get out there, and sometimes the stars just aren't right. That's no one's fault, so it's nothing to worry about. The important thing is to get the wire into the air, turn on your equipment, and keep trying." I think I knew what she meant. In transmission.
Lost Terminal is a Namtao production. It is written and produced by Tris Oaten, credits narrated by Lucy Stringer. Thank you so much to our Patreon producers, Ada Phillips, Kit, Jade, Felicity, Bilkey, Stephen McCandless, Mike Schneider, Trixie, and to all our patrons. Follow us on Mastodon at lostterminal@namtao.com. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite network. For bonus content and other perks, support us at patreon.com/lostterminalpod. That would be lovely of you. Lost Terminal will return next week.